My girlfriend said she loved me, but wasn't in love with me anymore. I had no idea our relationship was over until she began describing it as comfortable. 3 weeks after that, she admitted she wasn't in love. And I understood that comfort was really just a polite way of saying convenient. I'm Jude, 30 years old, and I spent 4 years with Lena. We started living together 2 years ago once she completed her graduate studies. Everything seemed fine, at least that's what I believed. We followed our daily patterns. I prepared coffee each morning while she got dressed for work. We alternated making dinner. We spent evenings on the couch watching series together. On weekends, we would hike, visit the local farmer's market, or simply sleep in. It felt like we were creating something meaningful together. But roughly 3 months back, subtle changes began appearing. At first, they were minor. Lena started expressing gratitude in a different tone. When I cleaned the apartment every Saturday morning as usual, she began saying things like, "You're such a good roommate," instead of boyfriend. I noticed she stopped replying with "I love you too." It turned into "You're the best" or "Thanks, babe." These small substitutions felt strange, but not serious enough to question directly. Then came our anniversary arrangements. 4 years together seemed important, so I proposed doing something memorable. Perhaps that bed and breakfast in the mountains she had mentioned wanting to try. She gave me an odd look, part guilt, part relief, and replied that we should keep things simple this year. She wanted to concentrate more on herself. I asked what she meant, and she just smiled and mentioned she was focusing on personal development. I didn't press the issue. The emotional gap continued to widen. She began attending yoga sessions that ended late. She went out with colleagues more frequently, returning home with the scent of wine and apologizing for losing track of time. She was constantly on her phone, messaging people I didn't recognize, tilting the screen away whenever I walked by. When I inquired about her day, her responses grew shorter. Work was okay, class was fine, nothing detailed, nothing that drew me closer. I felt like I was observing her from behind a barrier, seeing her but unable to connect. I convinced myself I was overthinking it and that she simply needed room to deal with whatever she was experiencing. I granted her that space. Perhaps that was my error. One Sunday morning, I was repairing the sink in our bathroom. The garbage disposal had been making a harsh noise for days, and I finally had a chance to fix it. Lena entered and leaned against the doorframe, observing me. Then she said, "Can I share something without you getting upset?" I glanced up at her. Water was dripping from the pipe in my hand. I replied, "Sure," and waited. She didn't wait for me to set down my tools or stand. She simply began speaking. "You're my favorite person," she said, "but I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. It feels like I'm living with my best friend, not my boyfriend." I remember exactly how those words hit me, not sharp or loud, just heavy. I wiped my hands on the towel, nodded, and said that actually explained quite a few things. She appeared surprised, as if she had prepared for an argument. "What do you mean?" she asked. I stood up and walked past her to my desk in the living room corner. I opened my laptop and checked my email. There was a confirmation for a cabin booking I had made 2 weeks earlier, the same weekend I had intended to propose. I had pictured the scene clearly. We would hike to the scenic overlook at sunset. I would express how much she meant to me, how I couldn't picture my future without her. I would kneel and ask her to marry me. The ring wasn't in my car or concealed somewhere clever. It was in the kitchen drawer beneath the silverware tray, next to the bottle opener. I had placed it there a month earlier when I first sensed the growing distance. As if some part of me had already understood. I canceled the reservation immediately while she stood in the hallway. Then I went to the kitchen, opened the drawer, and removed the ring box. I looked at it briefly, then replaced it and shut the drawer. The sound of it closing felt definitive, like shutting the door on the version of myself that had kept striving to earn her affection. Lena asked what I was doing. I told her I was simply adjusting my expectations. She looked puzzled, perhaps even slightly pained, but I offered no further explanation. There was no scene, no shouting, no tears, just a quiet acceptance that I had been part of a relationship that had already concluded weeks earlier. Later that week, Lena was on the phone with a friend. I was in the next room folding laundry and could hear her through the open door. She had the call on speaker while painting her nails. Her friend asked how I had reacted to the news. "He took it so well," Lena said. "It's kind of crazy. I thought he would cry or something." Her friend laughed. "Maybe he never loved you that much to begin with." Lena laughed too. It was an awkward, nervous laugh, the sort you make when you're unsure if something is amusing or offensive. I heard it, and something inside me simply switched off. Any remaining attachment or hope I had clung to that we might repair things vanished right then. I finished folding the laundry and began making adjustments, not dramatic or loud ones, just practical steps. That evening, I stopped preparing coffee for both of us. I made a single cup, for myself. When she asked about hers the next morning, I said I assumed she could prepare her own now that we were just roommates. She seemed irritated but didn't protest. Over the following days, I reviewed our joint expenses and made a spreadsheet. I divided everything evenly. Rent, utilities, internet, groceries. I canceled the shared subscriptions. Streaming platforms, meal delivery services, the joint gym membership. I sent her the details and said we should each manage our own finances going forward. She called me petty. I replied that I was simply being precise. Thank you to everyone who left comments. I didn't anticipate this receiving so much attention. Many of you advised me to move out right away, and I understand the reasoning. But it isn't that straightforward. We have a lease running until March, and ending it prematurely would cost both of us a significant amount. Neither of us can manage that expense currently, so I'm staying, but on my own conditions. Since my original post, things have kept evolving. I rearranged the apartment to clearly show we were living independent lives. I moved my clothes out of the shared closet into the guest room. I removed my books from the common shelf and placed them in my area. I even shifted the living room layout so the couch faced another direction. Lena noticed right away. "Why are you behaving strangely?" she asked one evening. "I'm not behaving strangely," I answered. "I'm simply treating us the way you described it, best friends sharing a place." She stared at me for a while, then called me petty again. I stayed silent. There was nothing left to discuss. She had made her decision. I was making mine. A few days after I posted, Lena's sister Tess visited. Tess and I had always gotten along well. She is 3 years older than Lena, more stable, and less concerned with appearances. She brought some boxes Lena had left at their parents' house and stayed for coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, and Tess asked how I was managing. I told her I was okay, just adapting. She gave me a look I couldn't fully interpret, somewhere between sympathy and regret. "Can I tell you something?" she said. "Off the record," I nodded. "Lena found the ring," Tess revealed, "months ago. She was searching for batteries in the kitchen drawer and saw the box. She had opened it. She panicked. My stomach sank. "About how long ago?" I asked. "Around Christmas," Tess replied. She had called Tess in distress, unsure what to do. She wasn't prepared for marriage, but she also didn't want to lose me. So she chose to have that conversation before I could propose. It wasn't pure honesty. It was self-protection. I sat there absorbing the information. The timing now fit perfectly. The distance had begun right after the holidays. The odd remarks about self-focus, the sense of relief when I didn't challenge her. "Why are you sharing this with me?" I asked. "Because you deserve the truth," Tess said. "And because I believe she's handling this terribly. She doesn't get to keep every benefit while ending things." I thanked Tess for being honest. After she left, I remained in the kitchen for a long while, staring at the drawer. I had said nothing earlier because I hadn't wanted to appear needy or uncertain. I reflected on all the energy I had invested in her happiness and how it had gradually shifted from being about us to simply keeping her content. That night, I took the ring box out of the drawer. I didn't open it. I simply looked at it, then moved it to my desk drawer instead. From her space into mine. Lena's birthday arrived the following week. Every year I had arranged something meaningful. 2 years earlier, I had planned a surprise dinner with all her friends at her favorite restaurant. Last year, I took her to a concert she had wanted to attend for months. This year, I chose differently. I bought her a simple candle from the neighborhood store. I placed it in a gift bag with a handwritten note that read, "Hope this year brings you the clarity you need." On her birthday morning, she entered the kitchen while I was making breakfast. Just for myself, she glanced at the single plate and asked if I was preparing anything for her. I said I figured she could handle her own now. She appeared hurt, but I kept my expression neutral. Later that day, she opened the gift I had left on the table. She stared at the candle for a long time, then read the card. When she looked up, her eyes were moist. "This is it," she said. "This is all I get." I told her it felt fitting under the current situation. She called me cruel. I replied that I was only being truthful. Since I hadn't planned anything, Lena arranged her own birthday gathering. She invited several friends over to the apartment that Saturday night. I remained because it was my place too, but I kept to myself. I sat in the corner with a drink and observed the celebration. Around midnight, when everyone was loud and intoxicated, one of her friends, a woman named Maya I had never cared for, said something that cut through the chatter. "You totally told us you were terrified he was going to propose," Maya said, laughing. "Remember, you were freaking out about it." The room fell silent. I looked up from my drink. Lena's face turned white. She tried to brush it off, claiming Maya was drunk and mistaken. But Maya continued unaware. "No, I remember clearly," Maya insisted. "You said you found the ring and didn't know how to tell him you weren't ready. Oh my God, that was so stressful for you." I finished my drink, stood up, and walked to my room. I heard Lena calling my name, but I didn't turn back. I had received the confirmation I needed. Not that I hadn't already known, but hearing it spoken openly in front of all her friends felt different. The next morning, I woke up to notifications. Lena had posted on Instagram the previous night, after I went to bed. It was a picture of her blowing out candles with a caption that read, "Sometimes love changes form, and that's okay," with star emojis. The comments were chaotic. People who knew us were asking what had happened. Some wondered if we had broken up. One comment asked, "Wait, weren't you living with your fiancé?" Another said it felt like a subtle jab and asked if she was all right. By afternoon, she had removed the post, but the harm was already done. Her polished image of a mature, emotionally aware woman managing a thoughtful separation had fractured. People saw the reality. Tess messaged me later that day. Lena had called her in tears, saying she didn't understand why I was being so distant. Tess told me Lena had said, "You broke his heart before he even got the chance to ask." What did she expect? I didn't reply to Tess. There was no need. She already understood. After the Instagram situation, Lena tried to behave as if everything was normal. She returned to her usual schedule, yoga, brunches with friends, acting like we were the friendly roommates she had portrayed. But the fractures were visible. Her friends began pulling away. Some contacted me privately, saying they had no idea she had been so detached about the situation. A few even apologized for initially supporting her. I maintained my distance. I worked from home most days, staying in my room with the door shut. When our paths crossed in the apartment, I was courteous but concise. I avoided casual conversation. I didn't ask about her day. I treated her exactly like a roommate I barely knew. She disliked it. I could see it in how she began inventing reasons to be in the same space as me. She would sit on the couch while I watched TV, even though she now had her own set in her room. She would cook and offer me a portion, though I always declined. She was seeking any response from me, but I gave none. Then she caught a cold. Nothing serious, just a bad one. But she texted me from her room asking if I could get medicine from the pharmacy. I was at my desk when the message arrived. I read it and replied, "DoorDash is faster than I am. Hope you feel better soon." She didn't answer. An hour later, I heard her on the phone, likely with her mom, complaining about how distant I had become. I put on headphones and continued working. A few days afterward, Tess visited again. This time, she didn't stay for coffee. She went directly to Lena's room and closed the door. I could hear them arguing through the walls. Tess's voice was firm and direct. She wasn't softening anything. When Tess emerged, she looked at me and shook her head. I asked if things were all right. She said Lena had finally confessed the full truth to her. She told me she didn't want to marry you, Tess explained. But she also didn't want to lose you. She wanted to keep you around without the full commitment. She thought she could have both. I nodded. That matched everything I had seen. Tess seemed like she wanted to add more but simply sighed and left. That night, Lena attempted to speak with me. She came out of her room while I was preparing dinner and stood in the kitchen doorway. I could sense her watching me, but I didn't look up. "Can we talk?" she asked. I continued chopping vegetables. "About what? About us, about everything." I finally turned to face her. "There is no us," I said. "You made that clear months ago." She began to cry. I hadn't anticipated that. She said she had made a mistake, that she had been frightened and uncertain, that she hadn't realized what she was losing until it was gone. She claimed she still loved me. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "But you don't love me the way I loved you," I replied. "You love the idea of me. You love having someone who cooks, fixes things, and makes life smoother for you. But you don't love me enough to commit. You don't love me enough to stay." I set down the knife and faced her directly. "You don't love me," I said. "You love the comfort of having someone who supports you without asking for anything in return. You love convenience. You don't love me." She tried to respond, but I raised my hand. "I'm finished, Lena. I'm not angry. I'm not hurt. I'm simply done. You wanted to focus on yourself, so go do that." She left the kitchen. I heard her door close. And then I heard her crying through the walls. I returned to making dinner. A week later, I informed her I was ending the lease early. Yes, it would cost money. Yes, it would be inconvenient. But I had saved enough and I was prepared to move forward. I had already started viewing new places. I found a modest house outside Portland, nothing extravagant. Just a 2-bedroom with a yard and a garage I could convert into a workspace. When I told Lena, she panicked. She couldn't cover the apartment alone, and she had nowhere else to go on short notice. I gave her 2 months to make arrangements, which seemed more than reasonable. She accused me of abandoning her. I reminded her that she had ended the relationship, not me. The day I signed the lease for the new house, I began packing. I took my time, boxing my books, clothes, and kitchen items. I left her the couch because I had never really liked it. I left the living room television because I had already purchased a new one for the house. I mentally labeled the boxes as parting gifts, but I never said it aloud. On my final day in the apartment, Lena made one last attempt. She asked if we could at least remain friends. I looked at her and said, "Comfort was never the issue. You simply mistook love for routine maintenance." She had no reply. I loaded the last box into my car and drove away. The house outside Portland has been exactly what I needed. It's peaceful here, far from city noise. I have a small yard where I've started growing tomatoes and herbs. The garage is now my workspace for freelance design projects. I wake up early, make coffee just for myself, and spend mornings on work I genuinely enjoy. It feels like I've reclaimed my life. I haven't spoken to Lena since moving out. I blocked her number and social media accounts. I didn't do it from bitterness. I did it because I required a complete separation. Through mutual friends, I learned she had to move back in with her parents. She tried finding a roommate to cover my share of the lease, but couldn't manage it. She also started a podcast about personal growth and relationships, which seems quite ironic considering everything. From what I've heard, it isn't doing well. She's having trouble with expenses and keeps turning to her parents for financial help. I don't feel any spite about it. I don't enjoy her difficulties. I simply feel nothing. That's the most surprising part. For months I expected to feel anger or pain or something strong. But now when I think of her, I feel completely neutral, like she was one chapter that has closed, and I've turned the page to the next. Tess and I still chat from time to time. She apologized for her family's role in how things unfolded. I told her she didn't need to apologize for another person's decisions. She mentioned that Lena sometimes asks about me, wondering how I'm doing. Tess doesn't share any details. She said Lena made her choices, and now she has to live with them. A few months ago, I met someone new. Her name is Harper, and she works as a civil engineer. We met on a hiking trail close to my house. I was out early one Saturday trying to clear my thoughts, and she was sitting at the trailhead adjusting her boots. We started talking about the path, then work, then life in general. She mentioned she had recently ended a long relationship that had started feeling more like a routine than a real connection. I told her I knew exactly what she meant. She asked if I wanted to get coffee after the hike. I said yes. We've been dating for a few months now. It's different with Harper. She is straightforward. She says exactly what she thinks. I can see it in how she behaves. She isn't looking for someone to manage her life. She wants someone to build a life alongside. There's no uncertainty with her, no hidden meanings, no guessing her intentions. It's refreshing in a way I didn't realize I needed. Last week we were sitting on my porch after dinner, watching the sunset over the trees. She turned to me and said something that stayed with me. "I don't do almost," she said. "It's either something real or it's nothing. I don't have energy for the gray area anymore." I smiled and replied, "Same here," and I truly meant it. I spent 4 years in a relationship that always felt like it was on the verge of becoming something deeper, but never quite arrived. I'm not repeating that pattern. I'm not interested in comfortable. I'm not interested in convenient. I'm only interested in something genuine. Looking back, the most difficult part of the situation with Lena wasn't the breakup itself. It was recognizing how much of my own identity I had sacrificed trying to keep her satisfied. I had stopped pursuing activities I enjoyed because she wasn't interested. I had stopped seeing certain friends because she didn't like them. I had stopped making independent plans because I was always waiting to see what she preferred first. I had transformed myself into a support system rather than an equal partner. I'm not doing that again. With Harper, I remain fully myself. I still hike early on Saturday mornings. I still work on design projects late into the night when ideas strike. I still spend time with my friends, and Harper does the same with hers. She has her own life, her own passions, her own ambitions. We choose to come together because we want to, not because we depend on each other. That's the main lesson I took from all of this. Love shouldn't feel like ongoing upkeep. It shouldn't feel like constant effort to prove your value or keep someone engaged. It should feel like two people actively choosing each other every day, not because it's easy or practical, but because it's authentic. I don't know yet if Harper is the person I'll spend the rest of my life with. It's still early days, but I know this connection feels different. It feels right.